Right, good morning. It is bake day. So I'm going to try not to waffle because otherwise this video is going to be really long. I'm just going to get straight into it. So we've got a few things that we weighed out last night. I put the recipe under the video last night just so people could get an idea of what they needed in the morning. I'll put it under here again, and I'll also write the method out just so it's there. But yeah, we're gonna get straight into it. So I've just got all my equipment set up. All I really need is my bowl and my weighing scales, and everything else is here. So flour we weighed out last night. Salt we weighed out last night. It's not essential, but it's just gets you ahead. Just grab Clint. So he's nice and foamy now. Got a good rise on him, and he's ready to go. So in here I've got 600 mils of water, warm water. It's about 28 degrees thereabouts. So I'm going to pour that straight into my bowl. We'll go water first. Okie doke. And then, oof, feisty. Oh, it smells good and ready. I'm going to add to this water 200 grams of starter, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to mix that together. So, okay, and this is a really good test here that we know that it's ready. See how it's floating? That's a really good sign. It's a sign that it's full of gas and it's just ready to go. So I'm just going to break up that. Kind of get it distributed, and this is to make it a little bit easier to get the starter all the way through the dough. Okay. So let's get the scales out of the way. This guy, front and centre. Okay, so broken up, there's still a few little bits, but that's fine. And then I'm going to take the kilo of strong bread flour that we weighed out yesterday, and I'm going to just pop it carefully so it doesn't splash. Straight in there. And it's going to look like a lot, but it'll be fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work it into that mix. Just go slow to start. You'll see it coming together. And so, like we were discussing yesterday, we're going to make, I'm not going to mess around with too much hydration. A nice low hydration to start with is going to be a bit easier to work with. It's going to involve a bit more elbow grease, but that shouldn't be a problem, I don't think. And yeah, you're not going to get as many disasters, I think. You see a lot of recipes and a lot of things on Instagram where people are messing around with like 85-90% hydration, and it's fine if you know exactly the conditions you're in, what the temperature is in your room, and you know exactly what flour you're using all the time, and you've got all those constants there. But in an environment where we're going to have a few more variables, a lower hydration is a better idea, really. There's a lot of different things that can affect the hydration, which is basically the overall outcome of your loaf. Everything from the humidity in the air to the where you've stored your flour, where the flour was stored in the shop, everything, even down to oh, it's from Vodafone. That's sad, isn't it? Oh no, should have put that on silent. Never mind, hopefully they're giving me a great offer. Probably not. Other phone companies available. Right, so yeah, a lot of things are going to affect the hydration, the overall hydration. So we're going to keep it nice and low just for this first bake. So there we go, that's looking alright now. And what else I've got here is just a bowl of water, a bowl of warm water. We're not going to add it, we might add bits of it, but we're going to kind of just use it as more of a way of getting our hands out of the dough and handling the dough without adding any flour. Because you see a lot of people using flour when they work with dough, especially at this stage, thinking that it's going to make it easier to work with. But all it's going to do really is reduce the hydration, give you a stodgy loaf. You're going to be adding flour at different points, which is going to add undeveloped gluten to your bread, and that's where you're going to get a bad product. So the only thing we're going to touch the dough with, apart from our hands, is water. So there we go. So I've got it into a rough kind of ball now. And don't worry at this point, it's not supposed to look smooth. Oh, hello. So I've probably mixed it for about maybe 5 minutes there. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to leave it for half an hour covered in a towel. And that process is called the autolyse. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow the dough to kind of rest, and it's going to allow the flour to absorb the water that we've just put in it. And that's going to, because we're not going to mix it a lot, that's going to help the protein in the flour break down, starch to form, gluten to form, and that's going to, we're almost letting the hydration and the starter do the work for us. So we're going to leave that for half an hour now. Notice I've not put any salt in. That'll come after this stage. Salt actually slows the yeast down, so it's not just there for flavour. It serves a purpose. It controls the rise of the bread. So if we put some in now, it probably wouldn't be the best thing to do. So it's basically going to, we've basically put the starter in there now, and it's having a whale of a time just eating all this new food we've given it. And if we put salt in there, it's going to really slow that down. So we're just going to cover it with a cloth. We're going to give it half an hour, and then we're going to come back. Right, so it's been half an hour now. I'll just take the cloth off. And so what you can see now is, I'll just dip my hand in there, it's kind of had a chance to absorb all that water, and you can already kind of see it's starting to develop itself. It looks a little bit smoother in a few places. You can kind of stretch it out a little bit. I mean, it still tears, but that's kind of, we'll fix that as we go on. It's going to get nice and smooth. But the next part is going to be adding the salt. So I've got my 20 grams of salt there. That's good kind of sea salt. You can use normal table salt if you like. Just a lot of the kind of books and things recommend using good salt, mainly because it's got less chemicals in, has less of a negative effect on the bread and on the starter. But yeah, either way, if you've not got it in, it's fine. So sprinkle that over the top, and then we're going to add an additional 50 grams of water, and that's just to help this kind of dissolve a little bit and incorporate into the bread easier. So 50 grams of additional water, that's kind of same temperature as it was before, 28 degrees or so. Just keep everything nice and warm, keep it happy. And I'm just going to pour that over the salt, and then I'm going to kind of mix it in like a churning motion like this, kind of stabbing at the dough, just so I can get that salt all the way through. And then we'll do another couple of little folding techniques at the end of this stage. I'll show you that. So I'll just start. You want to just get that incorporated in. There we go. It's going to take a few minutes, this, just to get it all worked through. And you'll kind of notice how this might be the kind of time where you can get all the bits off the side of the bowl that were a little bit stuck. Get those incorporated in, because we're just going to use this bowl. We're not going to use any other bowls. So whatever you can get in there at this point. It's going to sound minging, it's going to sound all squelchy, but it's going to be very satisfying. So you'll be able to feel kind of little crystals of salt every now and again, but this process is going to get them all incorporated in. So just kind of work that in for a minute or so. And then when you think you've got all of it incorporated, you've seen a couple there, what you're going to do is you're kind of going to take one side of the dough, lift it up and fold it across itself like that, okay? And you're just going to keep going around, turning the bowl, incorporating all these bits. And eventually, a bit of elbow grease and a few minutes, you're going to get a nice smooth ball-ish. So just work it in whichever way feels natural, as long as it's all getting in there. It's going to stick to your hands, but don't worry about that. So just give it a little bit more. If you feel like it's sticking a bit too much, just get your hand in that water. And so this is why we're keeping the hydration quite low as well. Kind of, this is all the water we're going to add, so we're at 65% now, which is kind of slightly more than if you were just making a basic kind of white loaf of bread. Slightly less than a lot of sourdoughs kind of suggest, but the amount of water that you might use adding in, you're probably going to add another 50 mils anyway, so you're probably going to be up there at around 70 by the end. So it's just kind of a little bit easier to manage if you're not having to deal with too much water too soon. So all that salt's incorporated now. It kind of looks a little bit blotchy again, but that's nothing to worry about. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to do 2 hours of stretching and folding. And don't worry, you're not going to be stood here for 2 hours. What we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a stretch and fold every 30 minutes. So we'll leave the dough to relax now. Just kind of get it to that nice ball shape. And don't worry that it doesn't look like a nice smooth dough. So we're going to cover that with a cloth. We're going to leave it for half an hour. We're going to come back to it and we're going to do our first set of folds. Okay? Okay, so that's had half an hour now. I'm going to take the cloth off, see what we've got. So, looks pretty similar, but what we're going to do now is we're going to do our first stretch and fold. So, we're going to use our little bowl of water, get our hands nice and wet, and if that starts to get too cold, warm water. We just want to keep as much heat in this as possible, just to keep it happy. Any kind of change in temperature, too cold, it's going to really slow down the fermentation. So, nice and warm is happy. Okay? So, to do one of these folds, what we're going to do, this is how I do it. You're going to see a lot of different methods, different techniques. This is just the one that I find the easiest. So I'll show you that to start with, and we'll maybe later on in the later video we might go through a few different techniques. So, kind of go in on both sides, get your hands right under the dough, lift it up, and this kind of front bit is going to fall underneath. You're just going to put it down, and then we're going to repeat that process a few times, and then we'll turn the bowl, do the same again. So pick it up, fold it under, and you'll see now that it's starting to kind of, as you do this, it'll smooth out. So we're going to rotate, wet hands again, underneath, and you can even pick it up and give it a good wobble about. Fold it under again. Okay, and then give it a little rotate. Whoop. And you can see what I'm doing here. You can see what I'm doing. I'm kind of stretching it out a little bit, kind of giving it a little wobble, just so the heavier bit's falling, and then I'm tucking underneath. Okay, and then when you think you've done enough folds, just kind of smooth everything out into a ball, and you can see now that your dough should be kind of smoothing out. It should be looking a lot less rough. It should be starting to feel a little puffy, like it's kind of starting to prove a little bit. And if you a good sign that you're doing things right is, I don't know if you can see it on here. Let me just switch this light on. Let's see. So you might just be able to see a few little bubbles kind of forming on the surface. But so that's a good sign. So that's our first fold, and we're going to leave that for half an hour covered again, and then we're going to come back and do another fold. Okay, so cover it up half an hour, and then we'll do another one of those. Right, so fold number 2, same process. You should be able to see now it's nice and smooth. It's starting to grow a tiny little bit. Nice few bubbles. So, same thing again, okay? And it should feel a lot easier now. It should feel like it's one cohesive bit of dough. And you'll find that as you do this, it's going to stop sticking to your hands as much as well. It's going to become much easier to manage. So giving it a good fold, tuck it back in, and then same again in half an hour. So we're going to give this its last fold now. So you kind of see there on the camera slightly. Should be nice and smooth now. Should be seeing a few kind of little air pockets on the top. And you know, it should have grown a tiny little bit. So we're just going to give it the last fold. Same as the others. Kind of be a bit gentle with it. You don't want to knock any air out at this point. There we go. And like, this is a bit you can enjoy. This should feel really good at this point. Got a nice dough going. Good signs for fermentation. Everything seems to be going okay. Nice big air bubble there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cover that back up and we're going to leave it in a nice warm spot for 2 hours. So we've finished our stretch and folds. And so the next step we're moving on to, that 2 hours, is called the bulk fermentation. And that's kind of like your, if you're going to make conventional bread, that's like your proving, basically. So that's like your first prove. So we're going to find somewhere nice and warm, probably between 20 and 24 degrees. So if you've got, you know, if the corner of your kitchen's nice and warm, or in the airing cupboard, that might be okay. You don't want it to be too hot because it'll go too quickly. You don't want it to be too cold just because it'll really slow down. But you can work on a basis of about 2 hours. Should be fine. So I'll cover that up. I'm going to give it 2 hours and then we'll come back and we'll start the next step.